हरे कृष्णा।
हरे कृष्णा।
प्रणाम। हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी, प्रणाम।
हरे कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण।
कृष्णा डी ड्यूटीज, जय
हरे
श्री प्रभुपाद।
कृष्ण।
कृष्णाकृत मंगलाचरण। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमः ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद, श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Okay, so we are continuing with our prayer from Sri Govinda Damodar Stotram by Srila Bilamangala Das Thakur. So far we have done up to 30 verses. So today we will continue from verse number 31 to 40. Okay. अक्रूरमासाद्य यदा मुकुन्द चापोत्सवार्थं मथुरां प्रविष्टः तदा स पौरैर्जयतीत्यभाची गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति कंसस्य दूतेन यदैव नीतौ वृन्दावनान्ताद्वसुदेवसूनौ रुरोदगोपीभवनस्य मध्ये गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति सरोवरेण कालियनागबद्धं शिशुं यशोदातनयं निशम्य चक्रुर्लुटन्त्यः पठिगोपबाल गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति अक्रूरयाने यदुवंशनाथं संगच्छमानं मथुरां निरीक्ष्य ऊचुर्वियोगात् किल गोपबाल गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति चक्रन्दगोपीनलिनीवनान्ते कृष्णेन हीना कुसुमे शयाना प्रफुल्लनीलोत्पललोचनाभ्यां गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति मातापितृभ्यां परिवार्यमाना गेहं प्रविष्टा विललापगोपी आगत्य मां पालय विश्वनाथ गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति वृन्दावनस्थं हरिमाशु बुद्ध्वा गोपीगता कापि वनं निशायाम् तत्राप्यदृष्ट्वातिभयादवोचद् गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति सुखं शयानानिलये निजेऽपि नामानि विष्णो प्रवदन्ति मर्त्याः ते निश्चितं तन्मयतां व्रजन्ति गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति सा नीरजाक्षिम् अवलोक्य राधां रुरोदगोविन्दवियोगखिन्नाम् सखी प्रफुल्लोत्पललोचनाभ्यां गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति जिह्वे रसज्ञे मधुरप्रियत्वां सत्यं हितं त्वां परमं वदामि आवर्णयेथा मधुराक्षराणि गोविन्ददामोदरमाधवेति 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 हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम हरे राम स्तोत्रम की जय, श्री बिल्वा मंगल ठाकुर की जय, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anybody would like to read the translations from 31 to 40? Okay, I'll
Hare
continue then.
Krishna, I can read.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, please.
After Lord Mukunda had met with the Krura and entered Mathura to attend the ceremony of breaking the bow of Kamsa, all the citizens then shouted, Jai Govinda, Jai Damodara, Jai Madhava. When both the sons of Vasudev had actually been taken out of Vrindavan by the messenger of Kamsa, Yashoda sobbed within the house, crying, Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. Hearing how the sons of Yashoda, who has but a child, was wrapped within the coils of Kalia, serpent at the pond, the cowherd boys cried, Govinda, Damodara, Madhava, and scurried down the path. Seeing the lord of the Yadus proceeding towards Mathura upon Akrura's chariot, the cowherd boys, upon realization of their impending separation, said, O Govinda, Damodara, Madhava, where are you going? Are you actually leaving us now? At the edge of a lotus forest, a gopi lay down upon the bed of flowers, bereft of Krishna. Tears flowed from her lotus eyes as she wept, Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. Being severely restricted by her mother and father, a lamenting gopi entered her house, thinking, Now that I have arrived home, save me, O Lord of the universe, O Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. Thinking that Krishna was in the forest, a gopi fled into the forest in the middle of a night. But seeing that Krishna wasn't actually there, she became very fearful and cried, Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. Even the ordinary mortals, comfortably sitting at home, who chanted the names of Vishnu, Govinda, Damodara, and Madhava, certainly attain at least the liberation of having a form similar to that of the Lord. Seeing Srimati Radharani crying from the pangs of separation from Govinda, the blooming lotus eyes of Radha's girlfriends also filled with tears, and she too cried, Govinda, Damodara, Madhava. O my tongue, you are fond of sweet things and are of discriminating taste. I tell you the highest truth, which is also the most beneficial. Please just recite these sweet syllables, Govinda, Damodara, and Madhava. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. These verses signify the mood of love in separation from Krishna. And that is the mood that Srila Prabhupada has while everybody desires to stay in Vrindavan. Just like the gopis here are desiring that Krishna stays in Vrindavan forever. But Krishna also leaves Mathura. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada left Vrindavan and came all the way across the continents, across the seas, suffering for the sake of all of us. And in the he was still serving Krishna, loving Krishna in the mood of separation from him. And so we can learn from Srila Prabhupada's example. So let's continue from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrit. We continue from chapter 21. Last week we saw that the first printing press was bought, and ISKCON Press has now started publishing Back to Godhead. The first publication came out in 1966, October. The Prabhupada, having taken the instruction from his spiritual master, is now giving the instruction to his disciples so that they can serve their spiritual master. And the first publication, he himself came down, just like he came down from his apartment to see the publication of Back to Godhead. Similarly, he has come down from the spiritual world to the material world to see that the glories of the Lord are published and flourished all over the world. And it was also nice that we had Chaitanya Charan Prabhu here over the weekend, because he used to be one of the associate editors, and I think even co-editors of Back to Godhead. few years ago before he started taking up other services. But yeah, just as he used to help in Back to God publication, similarly here Prabhupada is inspiring his disciples. And also Prabhupada was starting to look for new facilities to move beyond the Lower East Side. And now here we are seeing they met this agent, real estate agent, Mr. Price, and they are starting to see different properties. And now he has come to meet Prabhupada in his room, so we'll continue from here. Accompanied by a few disciples, Prabhupada went with Mr. Price to see the building. While Mr. Price, the devotees, and the custodian of the house were all talking together in a group, Prabhupada wandered off unnoticed to a corner of the room where there was an old-fashioned sewing machine. He began pressing the treadle and examining the workings of the machine. As Prabhupada rejoined the group, Mr. Price said, "If you can just get $5,000 down, I can get the owners to draw up a contract. $5,000 down and another 5,000 within 2 months. That shouldn't be so difficult." Prabhupada liked the building and told Brahmananda they should purchase it. Brahmananda was inclined to turn the money over right away, but Prabhupada said that first a suitable contract had to be drawn up. Mr. Price talked to the devotees in private, speaking in the Swami's interest and in the interest of the spiritual movement, and he seemed to be promising them something even more than a contract. Perhaps he would give them the building. It didn't make sense that he would give the building, but he told them something like that. He wanted the devotees to think of him as their friend, and he invited them over to his house one evening. When the devotees gathered in his house, sitting stiffly on chairs in his living room, which was lined with bookcases filled not with books, but with two-dimensional designs depicting rows of books, he continued to flatter them. He praised Hayagriva's writings, and Hayagriva was obviously embarrassed and flattered. He praised everything about the devotees. He also spoke of how his dog had recently died and said, "The house seems empty without the little fellow." He was an unusual man, effeminate and full of flattery and praises. Prabhupada remained reserved after his first meeting with Mr. Price, though he was interested in getting the building if the proper arrangement could be made. Brahmananda continued to negotiate with Mr. Price, and soon, according to Mr. Price, the owners of the building would be expecting the devotees to give proof of their ability to meet the payments. On Prabhupada's direction, the devotees hired a lawyer to go over the contract. "This Mr. Price is causing so much pain," Prabhupada said. "What is the difficulty?" He didn't see the necessity for Mr. Price at all. "Why don't we purchase directly from the owners? Why all these agents?" "It's just the way it's done here," Brahmananda said. Alan Coleman was a record producer. He had read the article in the East Village Other about the Swami from India and the mantra he had brought with him. When he had read the Hare Krishna mantra on the front page, he had become attracted. The article gave the idea that one could get a tremendous high or ecstasy from chanting. The Swami's Second Avenue address was given in the article. So one night in November, Alan and his wife visited the storefront. Alan: "There were about 30 pairs of shoes in the back of the room, people in the front and the shoes in the back. We took off our shoes and sat down. Everyone was seated and very quiet. Front and center was a chair, and everyone was staring at this chair. Even then, we felt a certain energy in the room. No one was saying anything, and everyone was staring at the chair. The next thing was our first sight of the Swami. He came in and sat down on the chair, and there was a tremendous surge of energy. The Swami began chanting, and it was a very beautiful sound. Swamiji had this little drum he was hitting, very penetrating and exciting. One of the devotees was holding up a sign with the chant written on it, so everyone could follow. Then the devotees got up and danced in a circle, a special dance with steps to it. The Swami was looking around the room, and he seemed to smile as he looked at you, as if to encourage you to join. The next day, Alan phoned Prabhupada to propose that he make a record of the chanting. But it was Brahmananda who answered the phone, and he gave Alan an appointment with the Swami that evening. So again, Alan and his wife went down to the East Village, which to them was the neighborhood where things were happening. If you wanted to have some excitement, you went down to the East Village. When they entered the Swami's room, he was seated at his typewriter, working. As soon as Alan mentioned his idea about making a record, Prabhupada was interested. "Yes," he said, "we must record. If it will help us distribute the chanting of Hare Krishna, then it is our duty." They scheduled the recording for 2 weeks later, in December, at the Adelphi recording studio near Times Square. Alan's wife was impressed by how enthusiastically the Swami had gotten to the point of making the record. He had so much energy and ambition in his plans. It was the night before the recording date. A boy walked into the storefront for the evening kirtan carrying a large two-headed Indian drum. This was not unusual, as guests often brought drums, flutes, and other instruments, yet this time Swamiji seemed particularly interested. The boy sat down and was preparing to play when Prabhupada motioned for the boy to bring him the drum. The boy didn't move, he wanted to play it himself, but Brahmananda went over and said, Swamiji wants to play the drum, so the boy gave in. Brahmananda. Swamiji began to play, and his hands were just dancing on the drum. Everyone was stunned that Swamiji knew how to do this. All we had seen was the bongo drum, so I thought it was the proper Indian drum. But when this two-headed drum came out of nowhere and Swamiji started playing it like a master musician, it created an ecstasy 100 times more than the bongo drum had. After the kirtan, Prabhupada asked the boy if he could borrow the drum for the recording session the next night. The boy at first was reluctant, but the devotees promised to return his drum the next day. So he agreed and would said he would bring the drum the next evening. When he left the storefront that night with his drum under his arm, the devotees thought they would never see the boy or his drum again. But the next day, a few hours before Swamiji was to leave for the studio, the boy returned with his drum. It was a cold December night. The Swami, dressed in his usual saffron dhoti, a tweed overcoat, and a pair of grey shoes, which had long since replaced his original white, pointy rubber shoes, got into Rupanuga's Volkswagen van with about 15 of his followers and their instruments and started for the recording studio. Brahmananda. We didn't start recording right away because there was a group ahead of us. So we went out for a walk in Times Square. We were just standing there with Swamiji, seeing all the flashing lights and all the sense gratification, when a woman came up to Swamiji and said, Oh, hello, where do you come from? In a very loud, matronly way. And Swamiji said, I am a monk from India. And she said, Oh, that's wonderful. Glad to meet you. And then she shook Swamiji's hand and left. At the studio, everyone accepted the devotees as a regular music group. One of the rock musicians asked them what the name of their group was, and Hayagriva laughed and replied, The Hare Krishna Chanters. Of course, most of the devotees weren't actually musicians, and yet the instruments they brought with them, a tambura, a large harmonium loaned by Allen Ginsberg, and rhythm instruments, were ones they had played during kirtanas for months. So as they entered the studio, they felt confident that they could produce their own sound. They just followed their Swami. He knew how to play, and they knew how to follow him. They weren't just another music group. It was music, but it was also chanting, meditation, worship. Prabhupada sat on a mat in the center of the studio while the engineers arranged the microphones and assigned each devotee a place to sit according to his particular instrument. They asked for only 2 pairs of kartals and they approved of the pairs of rhythm sticks, but they wanted several devotees clapping their hands. Rupanuga's usual instrument was a pair of brass Indian bells with the tongues removed, and when the engineer saw them, he came over and said, Let me hear that. Rupanuga played them, and they passed. Since Ravindra Swarupa would be playing the drone on the harmonium, he sat apart with his own microphone, and Kirtananda also had a microphone for the tambura. When the engineers were satisfied, they cued the devotees, and Swamiji began chanting and playing his drum. The cymbals and sticks and clapping hands joined him, and the chanting went on steadily for about 10 minutes until an engineer came out of the glass studio and stopped them. Brahmananda was clapping too loudly, creating an imbalance. The engineer went back into his studio, put on his headphones, balanced everyone, and cued them for a second take. This time it was better. The first sound was the tambura, with its plucked, reverberating twang. An instant later, Swamiji began beating the drum and singing, Vandeham Shri Guru. Then the whole ensemble put out to sea. The tambura, the harmonium, the clackers, the cymbals, Rupanuga's bells, Swamiji's solo singing, pushing off from their moorings out into a fair weather sea of chanting. Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Shah. Swamiji's voice in the studio was very sweet. His boys were feeling love, not just making a record. There was a feeling of success and union, a crowning evening to all their months together. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. After a few minutes of singing prayers alone, Swamiji paused briefly while the instruments continued pulsing and then began the mantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It was pure Bhaktivedanta Swami, expert, just like his cooking in the kitchen, like his lectures. The engineers liked what they heard. It would be a good take if nothing went wrong. The instruments were all right, the drum, the singing. The harmony was rough, but this was a special record, a happening. The Hare Krishna chanters were doing their thing, and they were doing it all right. Alan Coleman was excited. Here was an authentic sound. Maybe it would sell. After a few rounds of the mantra, the devotees began to feel relaxed, as though they were back in the temple, and they were able to forget about making mistakes on the record. They just chanted, and the beat steadied into a slightly faster pace. The word Hare would come sometimes with a little shout in it, but there were no emotional theatrics in the chorus, just the straight response to the Swami's melody. 10 minutes went by, the chanting went faster, louder, and faster. Swamiji doing more fancy things on the drum until suddenly everything stopped with the droning note of the harmonium lingering. Alan came out of the studio. It was great, Swami, great. Would you like to just go right ahead and read the address now? Or are you too tired? With polite concern, pale, befreckled, Alan Kalman peered through his thick glasses at the Swami. Swamiji appeared tired, but he replied, No, I am not tired. Then the devotees sat back in the studio to watch and listen as Prabhupada read his prepared statement. As explained on the cover of the record album, the sympathetic devotees thought that Swamiji, despite his accent, sounded perfectly clear, reading from his script like an elocutionist. This transcendental vibration, by chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, is the sublime method for reviving our Krishna consciousness. The language was philosophic, and the kind of people who usually walked out of the temple as soon as the kirtanas ended, before the Swami could even speak a word, would also not appreciate the speech on their record album. As living souls, Swamiji preached, we are all originally Krishna conscious entities. But due to our association with matter from time immemorial, our consciousness is now polluted by material atmosphere. The devotees listened submissively to the words of their spiritual master, while at the same time trying to comprehend the effect this would have on the audience. Certainly, some people would turn it off at the very mention of a spiritual nature. Swamiji continued reading, explaining that the chanting would deliver one from the sensual, the mental, and the intellectual planes and bring one to the spiritual realm. We have seen it practically, he continued. Even a child can take part in the chanting, or even a dog can take part in it. The chanting should be heard, however, from the lips of a pure devotee of the Lord. And he continued reading on to the end. No other means, therefore, of spiritual realization is as effective in this age as chanting the Maha Mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Alan again came rushing out of the studio. It was fine, he said. He explained that they had recorded a little echo into the speech to make it special for the listener. Now, he pushed back his glasses with his finger. We've got about 10 minutes left on the side with the speech. Would you like to chant again, or is it too late? Swamiji, Prabhupada smiled. No, it was not too late. He would chant the prayers to his spiritual master. While his disciples lounged around the studio watching their spiritual master and the technical activity of the engineers behind the glass, Prabhupada began singing. Again, the harmonium's drone began, then the tambura and drum, but with a much smaller rhythm group than before. He sang through without any retakes and then ended the song and the evening with a fortissimo drumming as the hand pumped organ notes faded. Again, Alan came out and thanked the Swami for being so patient and such a good studio musician. Prabhupada was still sitting. Now we are tired, he admitted. Suddenly, over the studio sound system came a playback of the Hare Krishna chanting, complete with echo. When Prabhupada heard the successful recording of his chanting, he became happy and stood and began dancing, swaying back and forth, dipping slightly from the waist, his arms upraised in the style of Lord Chaitanya, dancing in ecstasy. The scheduled performance was over, but now Swamiji was making the best performance of the evening from his spontaneous feelings. As he danced, his half asleep disciples became startled and also rose to their feet and joined him, dancing in the same style. And in the recording booth behind the glass, the engineers also raised their hands and began dancing and chanting. Now you have made your best record, Swamiji told Mr. Coleman as he left the studio for the freezing Manhattan evening. Swamiji got into the front seat of the Volkswagen bus while the Hare Krishna chanters climbed into the back with their instruments, and Rupanuga drove them back home, back to the Lower East Side. Hare Krishna. We're almost driving back home, back to Godhead, back home, back to the Lower East Side. Hari Bol. Wonderful. So there goes the first recording of the Hare Krishna chanters. So nice. That's what Prabhupada used to say. Anything and everything can be used in Krishna's service. Right? When they created these microphones, these recording studios, they would have thought they would be recording only these rock bands or music bands, right? But anything here, we are seeing that Prabhupada is using everything in Krishna's service. So even these microphones, when used in Krishna's service, become spiritual. And yeah, all the halls and like the Judson Hall and all the halls that were used, again, they would have thought that they will be used for some purpose to have some material gatherings. But when Srila Prabhupada spoke there, even those halls became spiritual. They became temples of the Lord, because we see pure devotees come wherever there is chanting and dancing and glorification of the holy names. And just like as only Chandramauli Swami Maharaj was saying the other day, right? Shri Gaur Natraj, right? He named the deities of His Grace Manas Prabhu and Niti Mataji. He said he taught us the ecstatic dancing and chanting during the 8-hour kirtan. Similarly, here Prabhupada is through spontaneous feelings after the kirtan was done, and when the record was played again, he went into ecstasy and started dancing, and everybody else followed in the same mood and same spirit with him. So that is what the holy names can do when it is sung from the lotus lips of pure devotees of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Okay, anybody else have any other thoughts, reflections, likes, loves, learnings from today's session? Anybody speaking, you're on mute. Or if nobody's speaking, you're encouraged to speak. This is our opportunity to use our tongue in the service of the Lord and His pure devotees.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just found the first album recording, I guess, on the YouTube.
I was also going to say that. That is wonderful.
I thought I can share that in the our ISKCON reading group. I don't know. If
Yes.
anybody...
Please do. Yes, thank you.
It was amazing how to see that the engineer also got inspired behind the glasses. And that's how we see when devotees got on Sankirtan, everybody, even the people who have hear it first time, they get attracted towards the holy name of Krishna. It is so powerful and so pure and simple. Anybody can join it.
Yeah, I saw, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, His Grace Adhisham Prabhu also, since he was here, and he's been traveling all over the US. And so I think he went to New York also. Of course, he was in Boston and New York before. I think he came to Cincinnati. And so in the subway where when Prabhupada used to chant, and our Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he also used to do Sankirtan and book distribution in these subways of New York. And I saw His Grace Adhisham Prabhu was performing Sankirtan there. They are the devotees from the New York Center. And in the video, we see a lot of people passing by, of course, and many people, ecstatically dancing and chanting with them. And you can see the bliss in the whole group there. So that is what, like you said, yeah, it just creates that atmosphere, because the holy names are so powerful and potent that they can pierce the hearts of those fortunate souls who have been kind of roaming around in this material world. But once that pure name touches their touches their ears and enters, penetrates their hearts. Naturally, the ecstatic emotions come out. So hopefully someday here in Cincinnati, I know some devotees want to. So hopefully in the future, maybe we can start doing this monthly Sankirtans in parks, and maybe this is the time. I think we have our picnic festival coming up soon. So that will be a good start, and then we can continue. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments?
Nothing for today, Prabhu.
Thank you, Nalin. Shama Karuna Mataji, anything from you? I know you have been part of a lot of Sankirtans in Indianapolis on the streets.
Nothing, Prabhuji. That's I was just fascinated by hearing, listening to the disciples, how they were intoxicated by the Prabhupada's music. Yes, Prabhuji. That's so wonderful.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for your kind association, wonderful thoughts, reflections, and engaging our tongue and our minds in the service of Srila Prabhupada. So that will end here with Vaishnava Pranam prayers. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Leelamrit ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Have a great day, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Dandavat pranams.
And that